The morning sun cast long shadows across the military checkpoint as Colonel Marcus Rivera stepped out of his black sedan. His polished boots clicked against the concrete with the confidence of a man who had commanded respect for over 2 decades. The insignia on his uniform gleamed, each medal telling a story of battles fought and victories earned. Today, however, he was not dressed for war, but for what he believed would be a simple routine inspection of the border facility. The checkpoint stood like a fortress between 2 worlds, its steel barriers and watchtowers a testament to the tensions that had simmered for years. Guard towers rose on either side, manned by soldiers whose eyes never stopped scanning the horizon. This was no ordinary border crossing. It was a flashpoint where diplomacy often gave way to silent standoffs and unspoken challenges. As Rivera approached the main gate, he noticed something unusual. The guards, typically quick to salute and open barriers for high-ranking officers, remained motionless in their positions. The lead guard, a young sergeant whose nameplate read Thompson, stood with his rifle held in a ready position, his gaze fixed straight ahead as if the colonel were invisible. Rivera had expected the usual protocol: sharp salutes, opened gates, and immediate passage. Instead, he found himself facing a wall of silent defiance that seemed to emerge from nowhere. The morning air grew thick with tension as other guards took notice, their casual conversations dying away until only the distant hum of generators could be heard. The colonel's jaw tightened. In his 23 years of military service, he had never encountered such blatant disrespect. He had commanded troops in 3 different conflicts, earned the Distinguished Service Cross, and had been personally commended by 2 different presidents. Yet here he stood, facing a group of guards who acted as if his rank meant nothing. "Sergeant Thompson," Rivera called out, his voice carrying the authority that had once silenced entire battalions. "I require immediate passage through this checkpoint." The young guard's eyes shifted slightly, acknowledging that he had heard the command, but his body remained rigid. His finger rested near the trigger guard of his weapon, not threatening but ready. Behind him, other guards had quietly moved into supporting positions, creating an invisible barrier that spoke louder than any verbal refusal. Rivera felt his blood pressure rising. This was not just about passage through a checkpoint. This was about respect, chain of command, and the very foundation of military order. He had dealt with insubordinate soldiers before, but never with such coordinated and silent resistance. The guards were not being openly defiant or disrespectful in their words, but their actions spoke volumes. The checkpoint had a history that Rivera was only beginning to understand. For months there had been whispers about irregular activities, about orders coming from sources outside the normal chain of command, about guards who had been instructed to follow protocols that seemed to contradict standard military procedure. But Rivera had dismissed these as rumors, the kind of gossip that always circulated in remote postings. Now, standing in the shadow of the watchtower, he realized that something far more complex was at play. The guards were not simply being difficult. They were following orders, but whose orders remained a mystery. Their silence was not disrespect, but discipline of a different kind. Loyalty to a command structure that Rivera was not part of. The colonel reached into his breast pocket and withdrew his identification papers, holding them high enough for all the guards to see. His credentials were impeccable, his clearance level among the highest in the military. Yet Thompson barely glanced at the documents before returning his gaze to the horizon. Minutes passed like hours. Other vehicles had begun to queue behind Rivera's sedan, their occupants growing restless as they witnessed the unprecedented standoff. Military protocol dictated clear procedures for such situations, but the guards seemed to be operating under a different set of rules entirely. Rivera realized that this moment would define not just his morning, but potentially his entire career. How he handled this silent challenge would ripple through the ranks, affecting his reputation and authority. The guards were testing him, but he sensed that this test came from someone far above their pay grade. The sun climbed higher, and sweat began to form on Rivera's brow. He could retreat, call his superiors, and turn this into an official incident. Or he could find another way to understand what was really happening at this checkpoint, what orders these guards were following, and who had the authority to issue commands that superseded his own rank and position. As he stood there, Rivera began to notice details that had escaped his initial attention. The guards' equipment was newer than standard issue. Their communications devices bore markings he did not recognize, and their formation suggested training that went beyond typical border security protocols. This was not a simple case of insubordination. This was something far more sophisticated and potentially dangerous. The colonel's mind raced through possibilities. Was this a security test ordered by higher command? Was the checkpoint under some kind of special operation that he had not been briefed about? Or was something more sinister at play? Something that would require him to choose between following orders and uncovering the truth. The silent response from the guards was indeed just the beginning of a mystery that would challenge everything Rivera thought he knew about military command, loyalty, and the true nature of the orders that governed their actions. 3 hours had passed since Colonel Rivera first approached the checkpoint, and the standoff showed no signs of breaking. The sun now hung directly overhead, turning the concrete into a furnace that radiated heat in shimmering waves. Rivera had removed his jacket and loosened his tie, but his dignity remained intact despite the uncomfortable circumstances. During the long wait, he had observed the guards more carefully. They operated with a precision that impressed even his experienced eye. Their shifts changed seamlessly, with replacements appearing exactly on schedule. Communications flowed between them through subtle hand signals and brief radio exchanges in codes he did not recognize. This was not the behavior of rebellious soldiers. This was the work of a highly trained, disciplined unit operating under clear but mysterious directives. Rivera decided to try a different approach. Instead of demanding passage, he began to engage the guards in conversation about their duties, their training, and their background. Slowly, some of them began to respond, though always with careful, measured words that revealed little while maintaining their respectful but firm stance. Sergeant Thompson, the lead guard, finally broke his silence in a meaningful way. "Sir, with all due respect, we have our orders," he said quietly, his voice carrying a weight that suggested these orders came from the highest levels. "We cannot allow passage without proper authorization regardless of rank." "Authorization from whom?" Rivera pressed, genuinely curious now rather than simply frustrated. "I hold a level 9 clearance. What authorization could possibly supersede that?" Thompson's eyes flickered with something that might have been sympathy, but he remained silent. However, another guard, a corporal whose weathered face suggested years of experience, stepped slightly forward. "Colonel, perhaps you should speak with Captain Morrison. She might be able to help clarify the situation." This was the first time anyone had mentioned a superior officer at the checkpoint. Rivera felt a spark of hope mixed with curiosity. Captain Morrison was not a name he recognized, which was unusual, given his extensive network within the military hierarchy. He agreed to wait while Thompson made a radio call using frequencies that Rivera's trained ear could not identify. 20 minutes later, a woman in fatigues emerged from a building that Rivera had assumed was merely a storage facility. Captain Sarah Morrison was younger than he had expected, probably in her early 30s, with the kind of alert, analytical gaze that suggested intelligence work rather than standard military operations. Her uniform bore standard insignia, but like the guards, her equipment was notably advanced. "Colonel Rivera," she said, extending her hand with professional courtesy. "I apologize for the delay and any inconvenience. I understand you're trying to reach the Henderson facility for an inspection." Rivera shook her hand, noting the firm grip and the calluses that spoke of hands-on military work. "Captain Morrison, I must say this is highly irregular. I've been waiting here for hours, and your guards seem to be operating under orders that contradict standard protocol." Morrison nodded thoughtfully. "You're absolutely right, sir, and I want to explain the situation as much as I'm able to. Would you mind stepping into my office? I believe I can shed some light on what's happening here." They walked toward the building Morrison had emerged from, and Rivera was surprised to find that it was far more sophisticated inside than its external appearance suggested. Banks of computer monitors lined the walls, displaying data streams and satellite imagery that looked more like something from a national security agency than a border checkpoint. Technicians worked quietly at various stations, their screens filled with information that Rivera could not immediately decipher. Morrison gestured for Rivera to take a seat in a small conference room adjacent to the main operations center. Through the glass walls, he could see the continued activity of what was clearly a major intelligence gathering operation, disguised as a simple border facility. "Colonel," What I'm about to share with you is classified at levels that require special clearance. Morrison began carefully. Your security rating is certainly high enough, but this operation exists in a compartmentalized structure that operates on a need-to-know basis. Rivera leaned forward, his earlier frustration now replaced by professional curiosity. Go on, Captain. This checkpoint is not primarily a border control facility, Morrison explained. It's a monitoring station for Operation Silent Watch, a joint intelligence initiative involving multiple agencies. We've been tracking unusual activities in this region for the past 8 months. Activities that suggest foreign intelligence operations, possible infiltration attempts, and communications networks that don't match any known legitimate organizations. The revelation hit Rivera like a physical blow. He had been completely unaware that such an operation existed in what he had assumed was his area of responsibility. Captain, I command the Regional Security District. How is it possible that I wasn't briefed on this operation? Morrison's expression showed genuine respect mixed with regret. Sir, the compartmentalization was not intended as a slight to your command or your clearance level. Operation Silent Watch was established under direct presidential authority, with a very limited distribution list. The decision to exclude certain regional commanders was made at the highest levels to prevent any possibility of operational compromise. Rivera felt the ground shifting beneath his understanding of his own role and authority. And the Henderson facility inspection I was supposed to conduct? That inspection was canceled 3 days ago, sir. New orders should have reached you through your normal channels, but it appears there was a communication breakdown. Morrison reached for a secure phone on the desk. Let me contact your headquarters and verify the status of those orders. While Morrison made her calls, Rivera tried to process what he had learned. His morning inspection tour had been canceled without his knowledge. He had stumbled into a classified operation that existed outside his command structure, and the guards who had seemed to defy him were actually following proper protocol for an operation he had no authority to override. The conversation continued, with Morrison gradually revealing more details about the intelligence they had gathered. Foreign agents had been identified crossing in the area, using sophisticated techniques to avoid standard detection methods. Communication intercepts suggested a larger network operating with resources and coordination that indicated state-level sponsorship. The checkpoint guards were not just performing border security. They were the front line of a counterintelligence operation with national security implications. As the full scope of the situation became clear, Rivera realized that his challenge to the guards had inadvertently tested a security system that was working exactly as designed. The silent response had not been defiance. It had been professionalism of the highest order, protecting an operation that could be compromised by even well-intentioned interference from unauthorized personnel. Morrison concluded her phone calls and turned back to Rivera. Sir, I have confirmation that your inspection orders were indeed canceled, and I have authorization to brief you more fully on our operation. However, I need to ask for your assistance with a matter that has just developed, something that may require your specific expertise and command authority to resolve safely. Captain Morrison led Colonel Rivera to a secure briefing room, where large displays showed real-time satellite imagery and intercepted communications data. The sophistication of the operation impressed Rivera, but what truly caught his attention was the urgency in Morrison's voice as she began to explain the developing situation. Colonel, approximately 40 minutes ago, our surveillance systems detected an unusual movement pattern in Sector 7, about 12 miles northwest of here, Morrison said, pointing to a map display that showed terrain Rivera knew well from his regional command responsibilities. We have 3 unidentified vehicles moving in formation along secondary roads, avoiding main highways and known checkpoint locations. Rivera studied the satellite images carefully. The vehicles appeared to be standard civilian SUVs, but their movement pattern was anything but civilian. They traveled in precise formation with exact spacing, made coordinated turns at predetermined intervals, and showed signs of electronic countermeasures that suggested sophisticated planning and equipment. What makes this particularly concerning, Morrison continued, is that these vehicles appeared exactly 37 minutes after our communication intercepts detected coded transmissions from inside the Henderson facility, the same facility you were originally scheduled to inspect today. The implications hit Rivera immediately. The Henderson facility was a weapons storage depot under his command, containing materials that could pose a serious threat in the wrong hands. If there was a connection between the canceled inspection and the suspicious vehicle movements, it suggested a level of planning and inside knowledge that made this a critical security threat. Morrison activated another display showing communication intercepts. Our analysis team has been working on these transmissions since we detected them. The codes are sophisticated, using encryption methods that suggest professional intelligence training. However, we managed to decrypt portions of the messages, and they reference specific storage locations within Henderson that correspond to our most sensitive materials. Rivera felt his stomach tighten. Captain, are you suggesting that someone with inside knowledge of Henderson's contents is coordinating with these unknown vehicles? That's exactly what we're suggesting, sir. And it gets worse. Morrison brought up personnel files on the screen, cross-referencing the timing of these events with facility access logs. We've identified 3 individuals who had access to the relevant storage areas within the time frame of the transmissions. All 3 are currently off duty and cannot be reached through normal channels. The magnitude of the situation began to dawn on Rivera. This was not just a border security issue or even a simple case of stolen weapons. This appeared to be a coordinated operation involving insider knowledge, professional planning, and resources that suggested foreign intelligence involvement. The canceled inspection, his confrontation with the guards, and the mysterious vehicles were all pieces of a larger puzzle that painted a disturbing picture. Morrison continued her briefing with the efficiency of someone trained in crisis management. Sir, we need to make some critical decisions in the next 30 minutes. Our projections suggest that the unknown vehicles are heading toward 3 possible targets, all within your command area. The first is a communication relay station, the second is a civilian infrastructure facility, and the third is another weapons depot. Rivera studied the projected routes carefully. His knowledge of the terrain and facilities in the region gave him insights that Morrison's team, despite their technological advantages, might not possess. Captain, there's a 4th possibility that your analysis might not have considered. These routes also pass near the Millbrook Bridge, which carries the main water supply pipeline for 3 major cities. If the goal is maximum disruption rather than specific target acquisition, that bridge would be an ideal target. Morrison's team immediately began recalculating the route projections based on Rivera's input. The results were sobering. The Millbrook Bridge was indeed within striking distance of the suspicious vehicles, and an attack on that facility would have consequences far beyond anything they had initially considered. Colonel, we need to coordinate a response that addresses all these possibilities simultaneously, Morrison said. However, our authority is limited to intelligence gathering and coordination. We cannot initiate direct action without proper command authorization, and the compartmentalized nature of our operation means that getting that authorization through normal channels could take hours we don't have. Rivera realized that his morning confrontation with the checkpoint guards had placed him at the center of a crisis that required immediate action. His command authority, which had seemed irrelevant to the classified operation, was now potentially the key to preventing a major security incident. What resources do we have available for immediate deployment? Rivera asked, shifting into the crisis management mode that had served him well in previous emergency situations. Morrison consulted with her communications team before responding. We have tactical units on standby, but they're positioned for border security rather than inland threats. Your regional command has mobile units that could reach the potential target areas, but coordinating between our operation and your command structure presents complications. Rivera understood the challenge. The compartmentalized nature of Operation Silent Watch meant that his own subordinates were not cleared for information about the classified operation, yet successful response to the threat required coordination between both command structures. They needed to find a way to activate his regional assets without compromising the ongoing intelligence operation. Captain, I propose a modified approach, Rivera said after considering the options. I can initiate response protocols based on a general security threat assessment, without disclosing the specific intelligence sources. This would allow us to deploy assets to all potential target areas while maintaining operational security for your classified activities. Morrison's communication with her superiors was brief but intense. Rivera could hear portions of the encrypted conversation, and while he could not understand the codes being used, the tone suggested heated discussion about protocols, authorities, and acceptable risks. "Colonel, I have authorization to coordinate a joint response under your tactical command," Morrison announced. "However, the success of this operation will depend on precise timing and coordination between units that have never worked together before." Rivera felt the familiar weight of command responsibility settling on his shoulders. The morning had begun with a simple inspection tour and had evolved into a complex counterintelligence operation with national security implications. The silent response from the checkpoint guards that had seemed like Defiance was now revealed as the first step in a crisis that would test every aspect of his military training and leadership experience as they prepared to coordinate the response to the emerging threat. Rivera realized that the true test was just beginning. The suspicious vehicles were still moving toward their unknown target. The insider threat at Henderson remained unresolved, and time was running short for preventing what could become a major security disaster. The command center at the checkpoint had transformed into a coordinated war room within minutes of Rivera and Morrison's decision to launch a joint operation. Multiple screens displayed real-time positions of the suspicious vehicles, tactical unit deployments, and secure communication channels linking Rivera's regional command with Morrison's intelligence team. The tension was palpable, as both officers worked to coordinate resources that had never been designed to work together. Rivera established communication with his regional headquarters while Morrison coordinated with her intelligence network. The challenge was significant. Rivera needed to deploy his forces to multiple potential targets without revealing the classified nature of Morrison's operation, while Morrison needed to provide actionable intelligence without compromising ongoing surveillance activities. Regional Command. "This is Colonel Rivera," he spoke into the secure communication system. "I am declaring a code yellow security alert for all facilities in sectors 4, 7, and 9. Deploy mobile tactical units to Henderson, Millbrook Bridge, and the East Valley Communication Relay immediately." His subordinates responded with the efficiency Rivera had come to expect from his command, but he could hear the confusion in their voices. A code yellow alert was serious, typically reserved for confirmed threats to critical infrastructure. Launching such an operation without detailed briefing was unusual, but Rivera's reputation and authority carried the order through without significant questions. Meanwhile, Morrison's team continued tracking the suspicious vehicles with increasingly sophisticated surveillance methods. Infrared imagery revealed that each vehicle carried at least 4 occupants, and electronic signature analysis suggested they were equipped with communication jamming equipment and what appeared to be explosive materials. "Colonel, we have a complication," Morrison announced, studying new intelligence data. "Our analysis of the intercepted communications has revealed references to a 4th location, the regional command center itself. Your headquarters may also be a target." Rivera felt a cold realization wash over him. If his own command center was compromised, it would explain how the suspicious vehicles had managed to avoid standard security protocols and how insider information about Henderson had been obtained. The scope of the threat was larger than they had initially understood, involving not just external threats but potential infiltration of his own command structure. "Captain, we need to revise our entire approach," Rivera said, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "If my headquarters is compromised, then deploying units according to standard protocols may be providing our enemies with exactly the information they need to succeed." Morrison immediately grasped the implications. "Sir, we need to implement alternative communication methods and deployment strategies that bypass your normal command channels. Can you contact your unit commanders directly without going through headquarters coordination?" Rivera's mind raced through his options. Direct communication with field commanders was possible, but would violate established protocols and potentially alert anyone monitoring standard channels that they had discovered the security breach. However, the alternative, continuing to operate through potentially compromised channels, could lead to disaster. "I can reach 3 of my 5-unit commanders through emergency backup channels," Rivera replied. "But once I do that, we'll have perhaps 30 minutes before the security breach becomes apparent to anyone monitoring our communications. The next 20 Minutes became a carefully choreographed dance of deception and misdirection. Rivera used the backup channels to redirect his tactical units, while Morrison's intelligence team provided false information through the potentially compromised standard channels. The goal was to make it appear that security forces were being deployed to locations other than where they actually were going. The suspicious vehicles, meanwhile, had split into two groups. Satellite tracking showed that one group of 2 vehicles was heading toward the Millbrook Bridge as Rivera had predicted, while the second group was moving toward what appeared to be the Henderson facility. However, electronic warfare specialists in Morrison's team detected signals suggesting that a third group might exist. Vehicles that had been operating under electronic camouflage and were not visible to standard surveillance. "Colonel, I need to share something with you that may affect your decision-making," Morrison said, her voice carrying a weight that suggested she was about to reveal classified information of the highest level. "Operation Silent Watch has been tracking what we believe to be a coordinated intelligence operation involving at least 3 foreign agencies. The activities we've detected suggest that this is not just an isolated incident, but part of a larger plan to simultaneously compromise multiple security facilities across the region." Rivera absorbed this information while coordinating the deployment of his tactical units. The scope of the threat was far beyond anything he had encountered in his military career, involving multiple agencies, insider threats, and coordinated attacks on infrastructure that could affect millions of civilians. "Captain, what you're describing sounds like the preliminary phase of a major intelligence operation, or possibly even a prelude to more serious military action," Rivera responded. "Do we have any intelligence about the ultimate objectives of this operation?" Morrison consulted with her analysts before responding. "Our assessment suggests that the immediate goal is to create multiple simultaneous security incidents that would overwhelm regional response capabilities and provide cover for a larger operation. The pattern is consistent with tactics used in previous foreign intelligence operations designed to test response times, coordination capabilities, and security vulnerabilities." As they coordinated their response, reports began coming in from the field. Rivera's tactical units had reached their assigned positions, but they were finding situations that did not match their initial briefings. The Henderson facility showed signs of unusual activity, but not the kind of direct assault they had been prepared for. Instead, there were indications of subtle infiltration and what appeared to be reconnaissance activities. At the Millbrook Bridge, tactical teams found evidence of surveillance equipment that had been placed in positions overlooking the facility, but no direct threats. The communication relay station showed similar signs of reconnaissance rather than immediate attack preparation. Morrison, "I think we may have been looking at this situation incorrectly," Rivera said, studying the pattern of activities across all the locations. "These don't look like attack preparations. They look like intelligence-gathering operations designed to map our response capabilities." Morrison's expression showed that she had reached a similar conclusion. "Sir, I believe you're right. The question is whether this is the actual operation, or if it's preparation for something larger that hasn't begun yet. The realization that they might still be in the preliminary phase of a much larger operation changed the entire dynamic of their response. Instead of preventing immediate attacks, they were potentially in a position to gather intelligence about a broader threat while appearing to respond to the decoy activities." Rivera and Morrison now faced a critical decision. Should they continue responding to the apparent immediate threats, or should they adapt their strategy to gather intelligence about the larger operation while maintaining the appearance of falling for the deception? The choice they made in the next few minutes could determine not just the success of their immediate response, but their ability to prevent what might be a much more serious threat still to come. Colonel Rivera and Captain Morrison made the critical decision to turn their response into a counterintelligence operation. Instead of simply neutralizing the immediate threats, they would use their tactical deployment to gather information about the larger operation, while making it appear that they were responding predictably to the decoy activities. "Captain, we need to coordinate this very carefully," Rivera said, studying the tactical displays. "My units need to appear to be responding normally while actually gathering intelligence about surveillance patterns, communication methods, and coordination structures. Can your team provide real-time analysis of what we discover?" Morrison nodded. her team already adapting their monitoring systems to support the new strategy. Colonel, we can analyze anything your units observe, but we need to maintain the appearance that our responses are reactive rather than anticipatory. The moment they realize we've identified the deception, the real operation will either accelerate or disappear entirely. The next phase of the operation required careful choreography. Rivera's tactical units would deploy to the expected locations, but would use advanced surveillance techniques to observe rather than immediately intervene. Morrison's intelligence team would monitor communication intercepts to track how the opposition responded to the deployments. At the Henderson facility, Rivera's tactical team discovered that the insider threat was more sophisticated than initially suspected. Rather than attempting to steal weapons, someone with legitimate access was systematically photographing storage layouts, security protocols, and inventory systems. The intelligence being gathered was far more valuable than any physical materials could be, providing detailed information about capabilities, vulnerabilities, and operational procedures. Henderson is being mapped, not robbed, Rivera reported through secure channels. Someone is creating a comprehensive intelligence file on our weapon storage capabilities, security procedures, and response protocols. This suggests they're planning something that requires detailed knowledge of our defensive capabilities. Meanwhile, surveillance of the Millbrook Bridge revealed a similar pattern. The suspicious vehicles had positioned observation teams that were carefully documenting security patrols, shift changes, and vulnerability windows. Electronic surveillance equipment was being used to monitor communication, frequencies, and response procedures. Morrison's analysis team made a breakthrough when they successfully intercepted and partially decoded coordination signals between the various surveillance teams. Colonel, we're seeing a level of coordination and sophistication that confirms your assessment. This is definitely preparation for a larger operation, and based on the intelligence they're gathering, it appears to be designed to simultaneously compromise multiple facilities while overwhelming our response capabilities. The real-time intelligence picture that emerged was sobering. The operation involved at least 12 personnel with professional training, sophisticated equipment, and detailed knowledge of regional security procedures. The coordination suggested command and control, capabilities that indicated significant resources and planning. Rivera realized that the morning's confrontation at the checkpoint had inadvertently placed them in the perfect position to uncover and potentially prevent a major security operation. Captain, do we have any intelligence about timing? When do they plan to execute whatever they're preparing for? Morrison consulted with her cryptanalysis team before responding. Based on communication patterns and the intensity of intelligence gathering activities, our assessment is that they're in the final preparation phase. Execution could occur within the next 48 to 72 hours, possibly coordinated with some external event that would provide additional cover or distraction. The scope of the threat required a response that went far beyond Rivera's regional command or Morrison's intelligence operation. They needed to coordinate with national security agencies while maintaining operational security and preventing the opposition from realizing their activities had been detected. Colonel, I need to brief my superiors on what we've discovered, but I also need your assessment of defensive capabilities and response options, Morrison said. Your knowledge of regional assets and vulnerabilities is crucial for developing an effective counter strategy. Rivera spent the next hour providing detailed assessments of security capabilities, response times, and potential vulnerabilities across all the facilities in his region. The analysis revealed several concerning gaps in defensive coverage that the sophisticated intelligence operation could easily exploit. Morrison, based on what we've observed, I believe their plan involves creating multiple simultaneous incidents that would force us to spread our response capabilities too thin to effectively address any single threat, Rivera concluded. It's a classic overwhelming strategy designed to exploit the gaps between our different command structures and response protocols. As they developed counter-strategies, new intelligence continued to arrive from the field. Rivera's units reported observing what appeared to be rehearsal activities, personnel moving through approaches to various facilities as if practicing specific actions, timing movements, and testing response delays. The most disturbing discovery came from Morrison's electronic surveillance team. They had detected communication signals suggesting that the operation included contingencies for dealing with unexpected resistance or early detection. The sophistication of the planning included multiple backup plans and alternative targets, indicating that the organizers had anticipated various defensive responses. "Sir, we're dealing with professionals who have planned for the possibility that their activities might be discovered," Morrison reported. "They have contingency plans that could still achieve their objectives even if we neutralize some of their capabilities." Rivera felt the weight of responsibility that came with possessing critical intelligence while facing an adversary that had planned for multiple scenarios. The success of any counter-operation would depend on coordination between agencies that normally did not work together, timing that required precision under pressure, and strategic thinking that could anticipate and counter the adversary's contingency plans. "Captain, I believe we need to shift from gathering intelligence to active disruption," Rivera said after considering their options. "The longer we wait, the more prepared they become, and the more difficult it will be to prevent their operation from succeeding." Morrison agreed, but she emphasized the complexity of coordinating an active response. "Colonel, disrupting this operation effectively will require us to act simultaneously across multiple locations while maintaining security for ongoing intelligence activities. We need to neutralize their current surveillance capabilities while preventing them from activating their contingency plans." As they prepared to transition from intelligence gathering to active counter-operations, both Rivera and Morrison understood that the next phase would test every aspect of their training, experience, and ability to coordinate complex operations under extreme pressure. The morning's silent response at the checkpoint had been just the beginning of a crisis that would require unprecedented cooperation between military command and intelligence operations to resolve successfully. The coordinated counter-operation launched at precisely 1800 hours, with Rivera's tactical units and Morrison's intelligence assets working in perfect synchronization across 4 different locations. The timing was critical. They needed to neutralize the air surveillance teams before contingency plans could be activated while maintaining the element of surprise that would prevent the operation from simply relocating to alternative targets. At the Henderson facility, Rivera's tactical team moved with precision that reflected months of training. Instead of a direct assault that would alert other surveillance teams, they used advanced electronic warfare techniques to disable communication equipment before quietly apprehending the insider threat. The individual turned out to be a civilian contractor with legitimate access who had been compromised through sophisticated social engineering rather than ideological motivation. Simultaneously, teams at the Millbrook Bridge and Communication Relay Station executed coordinated operations that neutralized surveillance equipment and apprehended observation teams before they could transmit warnings to their command structure. Morrison's intelligence team monitored all communication frequencies to ensure that no alert signals were transmitted during the operations. The most challenging aspect of the operation was the discovery that the actual command center for the intelligence operation was located in a facility that had not appeared on any of their initial threat assessments. Morrison's cryptanalysis team had finally decoded enough communication intercepts to identify a mobile command post that was coordinating all activities from a location 15 miles outside Rivera's normal area of responsibility. "Colonel, we have one more target that requires immediate attention," Morrison announced as the first phase of operations concluded successfully. "The command post is mobile and appears to be preparing to relocate. If they escape, they retain all the intelligence they've gathered and can restart operations at a different time and location." Rivera coordinated with regional commands outside his immediate authority to surround the mobile command post while Morrison's team provided real-time electronic surveillance to prevent escape or destruction of intelligence materials. The operation required split-second timing and coordination between agencies that had never worked together before. The mobile command post turned out to be far more sophisticated than anyone had anticipated. Housed in commercial vehicles that appeared to be part of a legitimate telecommunications company, the facility contained advanced communication equipment, satellite uplinks, and intelligence analysis capabilities that rivaled some government operations. When Rivera's extended tactical team finally surrounded and secured the mobile facility, they discovered the true scope of the operation they had been fighting. The intelligence gathering activities they had observed were part of a comprehensive assessment of regional security capabilities involving multiple foreign intelligence services working in coordination. The individuals apprehended during the operation provided information that revealed an intelligence network with capabilities and resources that extended far beyond the regional activities they had been tracking. Morrison's post-operation analysis suggested that similar assessment operations were likely occurring in other regions, representing a systematic effort to map defensive capabilities across multiple areas of strategic importance. Captain, what we discovered today goes far beyond a regional security threat, Rivera said as they reviewed the final intelligence assessment. This appears to be part of a comprehensive intelligence operation designed to assess national defense capabilities at the regional level. Morrison agreed, noting that the coordination methods and equipment they had discovered suggested state-level resources and planning. Colonel, the success of our operation here may have prevented not just immediate threats to regional facilities, but provided intelligence that could help identify and counter similar operations in other areas. The resolution of the crisis revealed the importance of the morning's events in ways that neither Rivera nor Morrison had initially understood. Rivera's confrontation with the checkpoint guards had placed him in position to provide the regional command authority necessary for rapid response, while Morrison's classified operation had provided the intelligence capabilities necessary to understand and counter a sophisticated threat. The investigation that followed revealed that the canceled inspection at Henderson had been part of the enemy's operational planning. By manipulating communication channels to cancel Rivera's inspection, the operation had attempted to ensure uninterrupted access for their intelligence-gathering activities. However, Rivera's decision to proceed with the inspection despite the cancellation had inadvertently disrupted their timeline and led to the discovery of the entire operation. The debriefing sessions that took place over the following weeks painted a picture of an intelligence operation that had been months in the planning. The foreign operatives had infiltrated communication networks, compromised personnel through sophisticated social engineering, and established surveillance capabilities that could have provided detailed intelligence about defensive capabilities across the entire region. Morrison's analysis revealed that the operation had been designed to create a comprehensive intelligence picture that would support future activities ranging from additional espionage operations to more serious security threats. The level of detail they had been gathering about response procedures, communication protocols, and defensive capabilities suggested planning for operations that could have had national security implications. Rivera found himself at the center of commendations and recognition that acknowledged both the success of the counter-operation and the unique circumstances that had made it possible. His morning confrontation with the checkpoint guards, which had seemed like a frustrating encounter with military protocol, had actually been the first step in uncovering and preventing a major intelligence operation. The guards who had maintained their silent response in the face of Rivera's initial challenges were recognized for their professionalism and adherence to security protocols under difficult circumstances. Sergeant Thompson and his team had followed their orders perfectly, protecting a classified operation even when confronted by a high-ranking officer whose authority they respected but whose clearance did not extend to their specific mission. Captain Morrison received recognition for her successful coordination of a complex counterintelligence operation under pressure, but she was equally praised for her decision to trust Rivera with classified information and coordinate joint operations between normally separate command structures. The success of the operation had depended on that critical decision to overcome institutional boundaries in favor of operational necessity. The broader implications of the operation led to significant changes in security protocols and coordination procedures between different military and intelligence agencies. The discovery that sophisticated intelligence operations could exploit gaps between command structures and clearance levels resulted in new procedures designed to improve coordination while maintaining necessary operational security. Rivera's role evolved as a result of the operation, with his regional command responsibilities expanded to include coordination with intelligence operations that might affect his area of responsibility. The experience had demonstrated the importance of regional commanders having the knowledge and authority necessary to respond effectively to threats that crossed traditional operational boundaries. The final report on the operation concluded that the success of the counterintelligence activities had prevented what could have been a significant compromise of regional security capabilities. The intelligence gathered during the operation provided valuable insights into foreign intelligence methods and capabilities that enhanced defensive planning across multiple agencies. Months later, as Rivera reflected on the events that had begun with a simple confrontation at a checkpoint, he recognized that the morning's events had fundamentally changed his understanding of modern security challenges. The silent response from the guards had indeed been just the beginning of a complex operation that had tested every aspect of military and intelligence coordination. The operation became a case study in interagency cooperation, demonstrating how successful counterintelligence activities required not just technical capabilities and tactical skills, but the ability to overcome institutional boundaries and coordinate between different command structures under extreme pressure. Rivera's experience reinforced his belief in the importance of maintaining curiosity and adaptability when confronted with unusual situations. His decision to persist with his planned inspection despite the cancellation order, his willingness to engage with the checkpoint guards rather than simply demanding compliance, and his ability to work with Morrison's intelligence team had all been critical factors in the successful resolution of the crisis. The checkpoint that had been the scene of the morning's confrontation continued to operate as both a border security facility and an intelligence gathering station, but with enhanced coordination procedures that reflected the lessons learned from the operation. The guards continued their professional duties with the knowledge that their silent rescue